Hello, friends. Okay. Today we are watching some horror animation stories from YouTube. I love listening to different spooky stories, but it's always different when they add their own little, cartoons and we can actually visualize what they're talking about. So let's dig into that today. I don't know how long I'm going to be staying on, but for each hour, I'm going to be coming back and forth to here to stop and start re recording. So let's see how many hours we make it to. We're going to be watching IMR Scary Tales. And let's get it going.
There was a small wooden house next to our schoolyard. That house belonged to an old man named Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith stayed in the house with his old wife. His wife loved children, maybe because they didn't have any of their own. All the kids called her Trick-or-Treat Granny. Every year, during the night of Halloween, she used to give all the kids lots and lots of candies, more than any other person living in our area. Every Halloween night, my friends and I used to run to her house and get as much candy as we could. She was old, but always smiling. Every year at Halloween night, she used to sit on her house porch with buckets of candy and give them away to every passing child. The town loved her for spoiling little kids. Mr. Smith also smiled at us whenever we went there. Perhaps he liked watching Miss Smith being happy while seeing all these kids. A week before Halloween, I went to buy groceries with my mom. She told me to get her some apples from the fruit basket, which was on the left corner of the small local store. I went there and started taking apples into my trolley, just when I felt someone standing behind me. As I turned back, I saw it was Trick-or-Treat Granny. She stood behind me, waiting her turn to get fruits. I always felt happy whenever I saw her, as she smelt like candy all the time. But this time, I didn't feel that way. Granny's eyes were a bit puffy, surrounded by dark circles. She smiled at me, but her smile was full of pain. My mom noticed us and came to talk to her. We came to know that she's not well these days. My mom waited till she finished her grocery shopping, and we gave her a lift home. When we reached her house, we saw Mr. Smith standing at the gate with a very angry face. Granny got out of the car and walked slowly towards him. We heard Mr. Smith yelling, "The doctors told you not to leave the house and take rest. Why don't you listen to me?" I overheard Granny replying, "Halloween is coming. I had to buy candy for the kids. I am all fine, don't worry." I felt grateful, thinking how much she loves us, that she went to buy candy for us, even in this bad health condition. After this incident, a few things started to become weird. Whenever we used to walk to school, we would notice Trick-or-Treat Granny sitting at our porch with her knitting wool and waving at us. But the next day, we didn't see her there. Not even the day after tomorrow. We came across Mr. Smith 3 or 4 times, but he was always busy going somewhere. 2 days before Halloween, I went to the playground to play with my friends. On our way back, we took the road near Granny's house, just to check to see if she was sitting on the porch or not. As we reached the house, we saw Mr. Smith rushing to the house with another man who seemed like a doctor. We realized that Granny is still sick, and we all felt a bit sad for her. The Halloween fever took over our town, as every shop and hangouts started to get dressed in Halloween decoration. But just before 2 days of Halloween, we all came to know that Granny was being hospitalized for serious heart trouble. Mr. Smith had to stay with her in the hospital. Every kid got really sad, realizing Halloween will not be the same without her. But I prayed to God for her recovery and decided to visit her after she comes back. It was the day before Halloween. My mother took me to the store to buy my Halloween costume. I always wanted to dress as Superman, so my mom bought me the magical-looking blue and red Superman costume. As I came back home, me and my dad started to put up all the Halloween decorations. After a tiring evening of work and excitement, I went to bed and fell asleep. At night, I had a very peculiar dream. I saw Trick-or-Treat Granny sitting at our house porch with candies in her palm and calling me saying, "Come here, come on." She was smiling, but her eyes looked the same as that day on the grocery store. I woke up and realized it was morning time. The final day of Halloween came. Our long-distance relatives came to our house, hence, everyone was busy having a fun time. Being among all those people, I forgot about the dream. In the evening, my school friends came wearing their Halloween costumes. We were all looking funny. I got into my Superman costume and went out to collect candies with my friends. Every kid was busy collecting candies. My friends and I also went to the nearby houses and started collecting candies. The last house in our neighborhood was connected with our way to school. After collecting the candies from that house, my friends decided to head back home. I needed to pee badly, as I remembered drinking 2 cans of orange juice before leaving the house. I told my friend to start walking and that I will catch up eventually. Now, you can all understand peeing wearing a Superman costume was a tough job. I walked to the corner of the street and helped myself, which took me enough time. After finishing, when I looked up, I saw my friends were already gone. I lifted the candy bucket in my hand and decided to head home too. Just when I was about to turn, I noticed a flash of light coming from my right side. As the school road laid ahead on my right, I could see Granny's house in some distance. Being the only house near school, it wasn't that difficult to spot for anyone. What seemed strange to me was the house light was on. I knew there was no one in the house, then how come the room lights are on? I was a brave kid, hence, I thought to check it out. I was curious too. I walked towards the house, and as I reached the front door, I heard footsteps inside the house. I knocked on the door and said, "Anyone inside?" I thought it might be some stranger breaking into their house. But the response I got shocked me. I heard Trick-or-Treat Granny's voice. She said in a mellow voice, "Come on. I am waiting for you with candies." I was more than happy to know that she came back all well. I pushed the door open and entered the house. I have never been inside this house, so seeing it for the first time made me a bit shy. There was a couch on the dining in front of a TV set, and stairs were leading up to the second floor. I said in a loud voice, "Granny, where are you?" She muttered from upstairs, "Come up, kid. I am here." I walked up the stairs following her voice. As I kept walking, she kept talking. "I am waiting for so long, but no other kid came. Glad you came. I bought so many candies. Come and have it." As I reached upstairs, I saw a room at the end of the hallway. Pale yellow light was coming out from that room. I walked inside and saw Trick-or-Treat Granny laying on the bed, facing her back towards me. I could see that her body has become extremely lean, as if she has lost a huge amount of weight in just a few days. I guessed it was because of her sickness. She didn't turn towards me. Instead, lifted her long, lean arm, grabbing a handful of candies. "Come to this side. I am not well. I can't move much," she said in a frail voice. I felt like her voice was coming from a long distance, though she was lying just in front of my eyes. She started to laugh in that voice, and I felt something was odd. A feeling rushed down my spine that suddenly told me I shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
I told her, "You take a rest today. I will come back some other time. Also, it's late. I probably should go home now." I was just about to leave when I heard a huge thumping sound on the wooden floor, as if someone jumped on the ground from a higher place. I turned back, and my skin crawled. The blood in my veins clotted. I couldn't believe my eyes. Granny was sitting on the floor like a frog. Saliva was dripping out of her mouth. Her eyes were blood red. She gave me a terrifying smile and said in a demonic voice, "Trick or treat," and started hopping towards me violently. I ran for my life,
Better.
I even tripped on the stairs and hit my head.
You ain't got time for
I
that.
was bleeding, but I didn't stop.
Period.
I could hear the loud thuds of Granny jumping on the wooden floor as she chased me.
Mm-mm.
As soon as I got out of the house, I slammed the front door behind me and ran away. I woke in the morning on my bed. My mom and dad got really worried as I didn't come home with my friends. They came looking for me and found me on the way to our house. I was lying unconscious on the road. After waking up, it all felt like a nightmare. But when my mom asked me what happened, I told them everything. I saw the look on their face changing as I told them all the details. When I finished, my mom hugged me to her chest and started crying loudly. My dad didn't say a word and left the room quietly. My parents didn't give any reason behind this reaction until I grew up. I came to know that Trick or Treat Granny passed away on Halloween evening due to a heart attack. They heard from Mr. Smith that she was in a lot of pain when she died. Her tongue came out of her mouth with saliva dripping from it. Her eyes turned all red from the blood clotting under her pupils. I didn't talk for an hour after hearing this. I felt sorry for her, thinking how much pain she has to go through on her last days. But I will never be able to forget that horrible side of her. Till today, on Halloween nights, I feel scared that she might come to visit me again.
Around March of 2014, I started talking to this girl on Tinder. She seemed cool.
Y'all be careful on the internet. Talking to these people on the internet. You don't know these people on the internet. They could have a completely different life than they're telling you. You know? Just be careful. People fall in love on, the internet. But people also get kidnapped and snatched up. Be careful. Be aware of everything on the internet. These people are not who they seem.
And fun, and after about a week of talking, she suggested we meet up in person. She invited me to this coffee shop, and I accepted. However, the day of, she started messaging me, saying she had something to tell me. Her pictures on Tinder weren't actually of her, and yes, she was a guy. He claimed that he really liked talking to me though, and begged me to still meet up with him. Naturally, I declined. I blocked his profile and just continued on with my life. About a week later, I started talking to another girl. Once again, she seemed cool and fun, and we hit it off right away. She asked me if I spoke to other people on Tinder frequently, and rather stupidly, I told her about my previous encounter with the man lady. Weeks later, I would realize that this new girl was the same girl as the week before. She asked me if I wanted to meet up, and I said sure, as long as it was in a public place. We decided on a cafe, and the next day I sat at the table waiting. 5, then 10, then 15 minutes had passed, and she was nowhere to be found. I then peered out of the window and saw, from across the street, a man staring at me intently. I looked away, waited a few seconds, and looked back, but he was still just standing there, staring. At that point, I left the cafe, got on my bike, and booked it home. I was definitely a little freaked out.
Are you looking
I
around,
tried to pull
making sure
myself
nobody
together
following you?
and reasoned that no one could have followed me. Then I deleted my Tinder profile, and things were normal for a few weeks.
Why do they keep showing
About
us y'all
3
using the
weeks
bathroom?
later, I started getting these phone calls. The numbers always showed up as unknown. I picked up the first few times to some guy breathing heavily into the phone. I was already a little freaked out. After about a day, I stopped picking up any call unless it displayed the caller's name. Then, I started receiving texts. At first, they were all pretty harmless. Calls for attention, begging me to meet them in person. then it changed to very sexual texts, until eventually the messages became threatening, and whoever was messaging me started throwing out my family and friends' names and their whereabouts, saying he or she would get them involved unless I answered. Because they were texting me, I could see a displayed number, but when I called phone providers, they told me the number couldn't be traced and that it was likely a track phone. Great. I waited about 2 weeks, not responding to the text, thinking I shouldn't feed the troll. But eventually, it just became too much. I started getting upwards of 50 texts and phone calls a day. I would wake up to 10 or 20 texts every morning. I then decided just to change my number altogether. The texting and calls stopped for a while, but sure enough, it started happening again. I called my phone provider, asking if they ever gave out numbers at a user's request, and they said their policy stated that they wouldn't and couldn't unless a valid identification was provided. Then one day, I tried logging onto my Facebook, but was somehow denied. Within a day, friends started contacting me, asking me what the hell I was doing, saying that they were getting terrible messages from my account. In particular, one of my girlfriends was receiving messages about her mom who had died years ago.
One of your girlfriends?
I apologized profusely and told people what was going on.
Oh, one of your girlfriends.
I contacted Facebook and explained the situation, and they helped me access my account again, at which point I had it deactivated for a while. Enough was enough at this point. I decided to contact the FBI, explaining what had been going on for over a month now. They documented everything, but told me that since I or any of my friends and relatives were in no immediate danger, they probably wouldn't be able to do anything at all. At this point, I felt stuck. I thought about hiring a private investigator or a hacker. I decided against it, however, and just hoped it would fade out if I never answered. I left my Facebook deactivated and continued to ignore any texts and phone calls I received. I never had any trouble at home, but some of my closest friends received the occasional text as well, which freaked us all out. I hated that they got dragged into it too. One day, I came home and things felt very eerie. Door unlocked, windows open, and no one home. A strong breeze running through the apartment. I did a check of the place and found nothing else weird, so I locked everything up and just waited for my roommates to get home. It's been almost 7 months now. The calls and texts have more or less stopped. I'll get an occasional text, but at most one every 2 weeks. At the peak of it, I was receiving almost 100 texts a day. It definitely affected my social and personal life. I became much more weary of the people around me and of my surroundings. I just felt like I couldn't really focus on anything until this all stopped. Work was difficult, though I tried to maintain my composure as best I could. Everything was just weird. Life was weird. I've since stopped using all forms of dating apps and websites. Things are getting back to normal at this point, and I just want to put it all behind me. I'm moving at the end of this year, so it'll be nice to have a fresh start in a new place. I'm not going to sit here and say that all dating apps are dangerous and that no one should use them, but definitely cover your bases. Ask more questions before meeting someone. FaceTime them first. Skype. Anything. I was naive about it, and I regret it. Be safe, stick close to your friends, and try to sometimes meet people in more traditional ways.
Look at that man.
I started a tech job with an IP DT1 long-distance company. The company is no longer around, and honestly, I don't know how they stayed in business as long as they did. It was really a pyramid scam, but thankfully I was on the IT side of things, so I didn't have to sell anything. It was a small, typical tech support call center. The customers would call in, or Verizon, Quest, etc. would call in and say DT1 lines were down or outages. I was the only female on my team, having to prove myself and show that I can do anything my male counterparts could. It didn't take long, and the customers respected me for being able to handle things. After making my mark, I decided to take the 10-hour night shifts. I worked Wednesday through Saturday from 1 p.m. to 12 a.m., an hour lunch, and after 6 p.m., I was completely alone in the whole building. The rush to get out of the office by 6 p.m. was insane. I couldn't blame them, but I decided having 3 days off was better than 2. Like I said, I was by myself for most of the night. I would have to keep an eye on emails and make sure I answered calls. It was a very slow shift. I would get a lot of video game, reading, schoolwork, and writing done during this time, but sometimes I would just wander the building, walk around just to get away from my desk for a time. I would have the VoIP phone system connected to my cell phone so no calls would be missed. This allowed me to go get a soda, go get food, and so on. One time while I was up away from my desk, I was going down to the lunchroom to grab a soda. The vending machine was on the basement floor. The basement had a wall of windows and one set of security doors. Same for the main entrance, only there was one camera facing that door. But nothing else to really make you feel very safe. I didn't like going to the basement much because the back of the building faced an acre of dark woods. There was a walking path to the woods, but for some reason they didn't install lights for the walking path. Never really sure why that was, but it didn't help the creepy factor. Sometimes I would see animals run past, but other times I felt like someone was watching me. I always tried my best to make it fast when getting a soda or snack, but sometimes it didn't feel fast enough.
You started bringing some snacks with you.
One night I was making my way down to the basement of the building to get a soda. It was a slow, dragging night, and I needed a little caffeine for a pick-me-up. I counted my money as I walked to make sure I had enough to get in and out quick. But out of the corner of my eye, I saw something dart from the glass door back into the darkness. I stopped dead in my tracks and tried to scan the forest, but like I said, it was just blackness. I felt a bit of unease, and everything told me to turn my heels and go back to my desk. But it was 9 p.m., and I had a fair bit of time left on my shift before I could blow this popsicle stand. I tried shaking the feelings off and briskly walked over to the soda machine and made my selection. The soda dropped, and as I bent down to get it, I heard a loud ping noise. It was as if someone had hit the glass with something. I stood straight up and felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I slowly turned around and was scared to see someone out there. But as I made the full turn, I saw once again nothing but darkness. I thought this was a good time to book it back up to the main floor. I didn't bother with the elevator. I went to the stairs and ran up them. My heart was already racing from having to go down there in the first place, then the loud bang, and now running up 2 flights of stairs. Once I was back at my desk, I sunk down in my chair and tried to calm down. It was just one noise. I was in a building with locked doors and locked inner offices. I kept saying over and over again in my head that it was nothing. I was relieved by that, but out of nowhere I got that feeling of someone watching me again. I peeked up over my cubicle wall and looked around my office. Nothing seemed out of place until I turned to face the front of the building. Outside the first set of doors was a slender, tall, dirty man. He was cupping his hands around his eyes to try and see past the reflecting of the lights inside. I dropped back down into my cubicle before he could catch sight of me. He didn't look like anyone I have ever seen at the office, and it was a little past 9 p.m., and there was no good reason why he is checking out my office. As I sit in my chair, I hear the door shake. I slowly stood up and watched him pull at the handles of the doors. They didn't budge, to my relief. But as I watched him, he turned to face me. His face looked bruised or dirty. I couldn't tell which. Once his eyes locked onto mine, he started to bang harder and smack the glass. I was so scared. It was the middle of the night. I was by myself and out in the middle of this office building complex. I grabbed my headset and dialed 911. While getting the operator on the line, the guy was walking back and forth from one side of the glass doors to the next. 911, what's your emergency? The lady's voice was direct. Yes, my name is Samantha, and I work at Spectrum IT Services building. I need someone to come out. There's a guy trying to break into my office building. While speaking with her, the guy disappeared from view. I tried to look in all directions, but I didn't see him. I knew that he wouldn't just walk off, not with how hard he was banging. Out of nowhere, a good-sized rock came out of nowhere and smashed against the door. I screamed and went under my desk. The operator asked what just happened, and I explained that a rock smashed against the glass door. She asked me if the glass was broken enough to let him in. I didn't want to stand up and look, but she told me to look in order to know where he was now. I crawled out from under my desk and just peeked over my wall and saw a huge crack down the first part of the door. I sank back down and told her to please have the police hurry. She said they were on their way. I have read many stories like this before, and people say that the cops couldn't get there fast enough, and they aren't kidding. It feels like time is standing still, and you can do nothing. Another smash against the door, but along with that, the sound of glass breaking. Sirens could be heard coming towards my building. It was music to my ears. I told the operator that the police had arrived and thanked her for all her support. I stood back up and looked over the cubicle wall, and the red-blue lights were flashing wildly. But the thing I didn't see was the man. The top part of the door was completely smashed, and the rock was laying on the inside of the entryway. One officer came to the front door, and others were out combing the area. I could see their flashlights moving all around the parking lot. The first officer to come in the building and greet me was a very kind man. He was patient with me and let me explain what I saw happen. Soon, my boss arrived and checked on me and then the damage. At some point, my husband was called and I told him I would be escorted home by one of the officers. I took the next few days off and started to look for another job that wasn't by myself at night. When I gave my statement, I explained to the officer that the person could be partnered with an ex-coworker who was fired a few weeks prior for stealing and just not showing up. He knew when people came and went. He knew where we kept the cell phones we were selling, not under lock and key, but under a desk of the provisioner. From smartphones to Blackberries, when they were still worth buying, plus VoIP boxes and phone cards. I went on to leave this job a month later and started at a credit card machine company. It was an office full of people, still a call center, but I felt safer, especially with the security and cameras all over the building. Like I said before, this company is no longer around. It was bought up by another company, and they basically liquidated all of the funds that were worth something. So, dirty man who tried to break into my office, let's never meet again.
Weird. Look at him. Just dirty.
I'm searching for my sister until now. We lived in a small city in Houston, Texas. It was my parents, my younger brother and sister, and myself. Being the oldest sibling, my brother and sister often obeyed me. Taking advantage of my power over them, I ordered them to do little unimportant stuff like telling them to get me a glass of water or having them go get me the TV remote whenever I was feeling a bit too lazy. My parents often kept me in charge everywhere we went. Living in a small city can give one memorable childhood moments, but can also leave someone with a scar for a lifetime. Halloween used to be that one special festival that made our town people go crazy. From wearing costumes to backyard barbecue parties, the entire evening made this day super special for every kid. For one night, we could all eat as many candies as we wanted, and our parents wouldn't tell us no. I was 12 years old, and my brother was 8, and my sister was 5. Being excited for this big upcoming Halloween event, we all went to the city mall and bought our costumes. Our dad took us to some various shops. The day was just a blast. When we got back home, the whole town gathered in the city park and started preparing for the festival. Some families arranged barbecue grills, some put up flags and colorful decorations. Our family made some carved pumpkin heads, and a family in our neighborhood arranged all the candles. After working for most of the evening, we all decided to take a break and agreed to finish the rest of the work by tomorrow afternoon, which was the day of Halloween. After coming back home, I had a quiet family dinner as everyone was tired after a long day. My mother tucked my brother and sister in, and then came and tucked me in after I settled down in my bed. The three of us slept in a big room. My brother and sister's bed were on the left side of the wall, while mine was on the right side, just beside the doorway. Though I picked on my brother and sister, I no doubt loved them and felt like protecting them. Thus, I chose to sleep beside the door, like a big brother. Being the youngest, my sister used to get scared easily in the dark. She sometimes woke up crying, saying she had a bad dream. I'd then go to her and caress her head for a bit to make her fall back asleep. And I would do this while telling her I loved her unconditionally. That night, when everyone was asleep, I woke up hearing a heavy breathing and a soft sobbing sound coming from the other side of the room. I sat up in bed and rubbed my sleepy eyes to have a proper look around the room. As my vision slowly adjusted with the darkness in our room, I noticed my sister standing against the wall, just beside our bedroom window. At first, I thought something came into the room from the window, but I saw that the window was still locked. My sister was breathing heavily and kept staring at me with her frightful eyes. I asked her, "What is it? Why are you out of bed? Is it a bad dream again?" She nodded her head slowly and said in a sobbing tone, "There's a goblin in our backyard, and it's calling me!" I got spooked at first, but then decided to go to the window and check it out myself. What if it's a burglar or someone with bad intentions? Then I might have to tell Dad. I gathered all the courage I had and went up to the window. My sister clasped my hand with her little palm and kept shaking her head, gesturing no. I calmed her down and made her sit on her bed, and then walked over to the window. I saw a small kid wearing a goblin costume, and they were standing in the middle of our backyard, looking straight at this window. At first, I heaved a sigh of relief, as it wasn't actually a burglar. Then I opened the window and said, "Hey, it's too late. You need to go to sleep, otherwise you'll miss the city park celebration tomorrow." My voice was a bit loud, so my dad came back to check on why we were still awake. But when I looked back after explaining everything to him, the kid was gone. I shrugged it off as a small, nothing to worry about incident and went back to sleep. The next day, everyone was running around the entire city. The festival mode hit, and I forgot about all the stuff from last night. Around 5 p.m., after my dad got back home from working at the city park, we all started on our Halloween get-ups. I was dressed as Pinocchio, wearing a fake pointy long nose made from ice cream cones by my mom. My brother and sister dressed as the Shining Sisters, which pissed my brother off as he had to dress like a girl. But after my dad handed us our buckets to collect candy, we all cheered up. When we came out of the house, every little kid in town was dressed as some spooky Halloween character and were wandering around the streets and houses asking for trick-or-treats. I went to our neighbor's house with my brother and sister, and our candy hunting mission began. After collecting buckets full of candy, we decided to go see the fireworks while eating the candy that we just got. The park was filled with kids and their parents. The three of us sat down under a tree and started having a fun time. Suddenly, I saw my sister looking to her right side, and she started breathing heavily again, just like last night. As I followed her eyes, I saw that same goblin kid from last night about 15 feet away from us. I looked back at my sister and said, "Hey, don't be scared. That's just another kid in a Halloween costume just like us." My sister believed me, and she calmed down. I waved, looking at the kid, and the kid waved back to us. The kid started to wave us over with his hand while standing there silently.
Why? No.
I got up and went to the kid with my brother and sister in tow. I looked at him and said, "Well, hi, where do you live?" The kid didn't say a word, and only his goblin mask kept smirking at us. It felt a bit unusual now, so I said, "Hey, can't you talk?" But suddenly, the kid did something completely unexpected. He snatched my little brother's candy bucket and started running in the opposite direction. I realized this was a little mean kid, so I kept chasing after him. Seeing me running after him, my brother and sister also started running with me. The goblin kid ran straight to a minivan parked under a dark bushy tree, far away from the crowded park. Just as I was about to grab his shoulder, he elbowed me in the eye so hard that I fell and hit the ground really hard. Suddenly, the minivan's back door opened up, and two guys in entirely black attire grabbed my brother and sister and pulled them inside. I rose up to stop them, but someone already started the minivan and closed one door, taking my sister inside. While the other guy tried to pull my brother inside, I shouted, "Leave my brother alone! Let my sister go!" I heard the guy yelling to the driver to slow down the car, saying, "Oh, this one's not a girl, it's her brother! Ah, damn it! Stupid Halloween costumes!" The minivan slowed up a bit, and that devilish man threw my brother onto the road. Even though the van was going slow, my brother still scratched up his arms and knees. He even got a bump on his head from hitting a rock on the road. I quickly grabbed him and ran towards the van, shouting for help. But due to the entire area being secluded, and everyone so busy celebrating at the park, no one was there to hear my cry. The van started to pick up speed, and that goblin kid leaned to close the other door. Just when he was about to do so, he removed his mask. And I saw it was just this bearded, ugly-looking man. It was probably a dwarf. He started laughing at me in a squeaky voice, and he started to wave goodbye at me as the van disappeared into the darkness. My parents and I are still hopeful that my sister is alive somewhere in this world. My parents still live in the same city, waiting for her to come back one day. I moved to California with my brother, and we filed cases to every police station possible. We kept creating search campaigns for my sister, using every social media platform we could. My brother and I never celebrated a festival again. Not after she was kidnapped by that horrible bunch of thugs. I'm sure that dwarf man must have followed and spotted my sister on the night before Halloween, and then they planned everything out ahead of time for the next day. I'm still so angry at myself for not taking this matter to my parents in the first place, and for chasing a stranger with my little brother and sister, instead of going to my parents for help. I pray to God every day, asking no harm to come to my little sister. Those horrible men with their preference for kidnapping little girls just... It shocks my heart with fear every day. So, Kathy, if you see this or come to know about us in any way, please come home. We'll wait forever for you. And I'd also like to say to every kid out there on Halloween, or, any day of your life, never go after a stranger without your parents' knowledge.
At all.
This happened to me back in the summer of 2018. Just thinking about it now still gives me chills to this day when I consider what could have happened to me that night. I'll start by giving a little backstory. I'm a 24-year-old male who lives in Minnesota. I was staying with a friend who lives in Chicago. We've been friends since sophomore year in college, so I was really looking forward to catching up with him since our departure after graduation. I was only visiting him for a week, and then I would be on my way home. During the evening, my friend, who we'll call Steven, and his mother went out to go get food, and I decided to stay behind for the simple fact that I just wanted to get settled in for the night. However, the house became extremely hot, so that's when I decided to get out of the house and go walk around the neighborhood. Now, something that you should know about me at this point is that I'm a frequent walker, especially at night. It really calms my nerves whenever I'm on edge, or when I just need to get away for a while. I'm a really antisocial guy in a way. After about 10 minutes of walking, I came across the neighborhood park, and just to kill some time, I decided to go explore it. This park was massive. There was a baseball field enclosed by a walking trail that went on for about a mile, and there was also a small basketball court. In the distance, I could also see a small playground area for children, along with a dimly lit bathroom that you would typically see at any community park. The creepiest part was the trees that surrounded the area. Even though it was a park, it kind of put you in the state of mind that you were standing in the middle of a forest preserve. I didn't have any fears about walking around this park at night, because Steven always assured me that his neighborhood was safe for the most part. "Nothing ever happens here," he would always say.
Boy,
But he was mistaken. I decided to keep walking, and I eventually came across a small park bench, so I decided to sit down and enjoy the night breeze for a little bit. I was at peace when I suddenly heard a rustling noise coming from the nearby trees. I quickly turned around, and there was nothing there. Might have been the wind, a bird, or maybe a squirrel, I thought. After about 5 minutes of relaxing, I pull out my phone to see a text from Steven. It read, "Hey, we just got back. Where are you?" I was about to respond when I looked up to see a car pull in near the playground a few yards away from where I was sitting. This was pretty odd, seeing how it was about 9:30 p.m. But I didn't know much about this area, so I dismissed it as being completely normal. A few minutes go by, and I thought that someone would exit the car, but they didn't. It was at this point that I started to feel a little on edge. The headlights were irritating me, so I got up and started walking back to Steven's house. I texted him saying, "I'm on my way back from the park." In that moment, I heard a car door slam behind me, and I looked back to see a very large man. He was standing in front of his car, and it looked like he was staring right at me. Now keep in mind, it was pretty dark at this point, so I can't really describe any of his facial features. I began walking again, picking up my pace and looking behind me every few seconds. The man was now following me, and I was growing paranoid. "I don't want to die tonight," I thought to myself. Suddenly, I noticed out of the corner of my eye, 2 men emerged from the trees in the darkness. I was almost at the entrance of the playground when I heard, "Hey, sexy, come here a minute. You want to have some fun tonight?" I was scared shitless at this point. Adrenaline started to kick in, and to this day, I still believe I did one of the stupidest things I've ever done. I turned around to face the men head on and yelled, "Fuck off! I'm not in the mood for games tonight." At that moment, a large hand covered my mouth from behind, and it was suddenly harder to breathe. I tried to scream, but the gloved hands just held me tighter. I started to feel lightheaded, and everything turned blurry. I then blacked out. I woke up in a car, still feeling lightheaded. My hands were tied, and my belt was unbuckled. I immediately noticed that all 4 of the car seats had men in them, and I was sandwiched between 2 of them in the back seat. "What's going on?" I said in a hoarse voice. "We're going for a ride," the driver said. I felt weak and sluggish as I desperately tried to move my body, but a sharp blow to the side from one of the men sitting beside me stopped me in my tracks. There was no way I could fight 4 guys bigger than me. I started begging for them to let me go, and they responded by just laughing at me. Tears ran down my face as I struggled to get my hands free. But it was useless. I felt nothing but fear and anger and overall embarrassment. The car started to back out of the parking lot, when suddenly there was the sound of the back window glass breaking. 3 of the men immediately got out of the car to check it out. "What the hell just happened?" one of them yelled. "You sickos let him go now!" I recognized the second voice as Steven. With the car doors open, I took the opportunity to escape. Desperately stumbling onto the pavement, I looked up to see Steven holding a rock in one hand and a tree branch in the other. "I already called the police on you fuckers," he said. I started to gather my strength and joined my friend in the standoff. We were outnumbered, but I wasn't going to let him fight these men on his own. He was like a brother to me, and where I come from, you protect your family. In the distance, we heard the sound of sirens. The men quickly hopped back in the vehicle and booked it out of there fast. I immediately noticed the car didn't have any license plate. I'll skip through the police details, because it was just the usual. They took my statement and told me that they would let me know if anything happens. The week passed without further incident. The day that I was getting ready to go back to Minnesota, I was trying to block out everything that happened as best as I could, when Steven said, "You could have been Michael." "Who's Michael?" I asked. He then told me that when he was in middle school, he had a friend named Michael. They used to play together all the time at that playground. One day a stranger approached them. The man claimed to be a friend of Michael's dad. To make a long story short, he never saw that man or his friend Michael ever again.
Last night, I was watching That 70s Show reruns, eyes heavy and mind in a daze. I was starting to fall asleep when I woke to what I thought was a loud by the patio door. The chocolate chip cookie I was halfway through slid off my hand, somersaulting down my torso, as this noise brought me to an awakening twitch. Just an animal, I thought, with the house settling. Eric Foreman is so goofy. Donna is way out of his league. Eric is lucky. I like this show. Back to sleep. This time from the ceiling. I shrieked. What the hell is that? This time, I sit up, with upright posture, like I'm ready to focus on any minute detail that strikes my senses. I turn the kitchen light on, just out of a general state of fear, without really any concern about anything being in the kitchen. I check the back deck, from the thump from before. That's super weird, I think. Nothing else happens, so I start to relax some. I'm not really worried at this point, but a little on edge. I'm a college student, spending the summer at home with my parents, working in downtown DC. They're at the beach, so I'm alone in this rather large house. It's 10:36 p.m. when the door knocks. Seriously, I think? No, again, if I were on the set of a horror movie, or had just been watching something scary for that matter, I would have drawn an immediate connection between the thump noise and the door knocking unusually late at night. But neither of these things applied to me at that moment, so I didn't. I was still kind of anxious about those thumps, but when the door knocked, my attention immediately forgot about the noise that was likely nothing to worry about.
You gotta always be
Probably a
suspicious.
salesperson, or a mailman. I remember one time a few years back, a UPS man rang our doorbell at like midnight to drop something off. I was the only one awake at that time, so that had scared the shit out of me back then. Maybe it was something like that, I thought. Most likely scenario would be my buddy Frank, who considered coming over, but said he was really too tired. He can be a little spacey though sometimes, so I guess he
Why
could
would
have
Frank
changed his
go over
mind
this
about telling
late?
me.
He ain't even got no
I
people.
guess I'd go over there and at least tell whoever the hell it is that I like my privacy. Unless it's Frank, of course, who I will then remind how spacey he can be. A little weirded out by the situation though, I grab the first thing resembling a weapon I can get my hands on. It's an old lacrosse stick. I hold it from the head with the shaft facing outward like a lightsaber. As I turn the corner to my foyer, I see through the door side windows a pair of skinny legs with
Oh, hell no, that's not Frank.
Alright, this is weird. That's definitely a skinny chick. Maybe she's confused? Trying to visit a friend and knocked on the wrong house? The house next door is about the same size and doesn't really look a lot like mine. But I don't know what else it could possibly be at this point. All of this enters my mind in a
Look at
matter of
those
seconds
toenails.
between my footsteps in the kitchen and the doormat between the front door and the rest of my home. As I stand between the large modern door and whoever the hell is out there, I lean my lacrosse stick on the ground behind me so the stranger won't see it. As my hand floats hesitantly towards the
You
doorknob,
could've just put it
I
behind
hear
you
a
like
voice coming
that.
through the other side of the door. No clear words, just light whispers. I assume someone must be with the Slippers girl, because I haven't even opened the door yet, and as far as I can tell, this person hasn't even seen that someone is home. Unless maybe she's talking to herself. That was a thought that didn't come to my mind at all. My hand stopped frozen in air, about halfway between the rest of my body and the door, like I was doing some weird robot dance move. I wait for several seconds, disturbed by the odd synchronization between my movement towards the doorknob and the voice outside. I wait longer. No voices. I take a deep breath through my nose and out through my mouth. I open the door about 3/4 way quickly, like a toddler anxious and curious to discover the monster in their closet. I stick the right half of my body out, facing two dark, feminine figures on my front porch.
Oh,
The
hell
first
no.
thing I notice is those beat-up slippers. I look
You're
up
not
from
noticing
there,
the toenails?
my head and neck tilting slightly upward to see the rest of her. Straight,
Oh,
black
why
hair,
she like that?
uncombed, matted in different directions. She looked sickly, shaking in the cold, with a hooded sweatshirt and tiny khaki shorts. She's about 5'3" and looks 13 years of age, staring straight forward, which for me, at about 5'9", standing on a raised surface above my lowered porch, is at my pelvis. In
You
the
see
dark,
you
I cannot
orphan,
make out the
them
features
little
on her face,
dwarf
but I could
kids
tell
be
something
killing.
about her was awkward. The way she stood there, off balance, her neck tilted to the left side like a chewed-up, overused doll. Before I can react in any way, I observe her partner, about a half foot behind her and to the left. A noticeably younger girl, maybe 9 years old, but with about an inch on her older sister, wearing a ragged dark blue shirt, black pants, and rain boots. She had similar black hair, though she didn't have the same bizarre demeanor as her older sister. I look down at these two girls, and I have no idea how long it has been since I opened the door. Have they said anything? What do I say? This is fucking
Get
weird.
the hell off my porch.
Can I help you two? I mutter out in the tone I typically use talking to kids, but with an undertone of chill in my voice. I stutter some when I'm nervous or excited.
It's
and
mad
here, I
late.
could
Where's
barely
your
make out a
damn
word.
mammy?
Hello, sir, please. We are cold and would like to use the phone.
The younger one says, her head facing straight forward. Her tone, it was like nothing I had ever heard. It was feminine, sure, but each word left her mouth fully independent of the one before. Like they were just words being spit out of a machine and placed in the correct order by a third party. Almost like a robot. But she was clearly human. A young girl I'm speaking to, yet somehow very, very far off. She didn't sound her age. She sounded at least 14, maybe 15. But she looked no older than 10. Why did she speak to me and not her older sister? What is going on here? Is her
Close
older
the door.
sister shy? Mentally handicapped? Am I dreaming? What does she mean about using my phone? It was like she was speaking off of a script.
Close the door.
Mixed up her question. I wonder if she meant to ask me something else.
What if her older sister
Not
got
sure how to
hands?
respond to this
Run in there and
arbitrary
start
question
winking you
I
up.
manage. Well, I'm not sure what you're asking. Are you two lost? First, Nothing. Just stares, straight forward, directly ahead, as if with no visual awareness. Then the younger one says,
Please, sir, we are alone and need to call home. Let us in.
Her response, with the same monotone voice, didn't really answer my question. It was like she was speaking without any concern over what I was saying, just when it was time for her next line. And the last part, let us in. Like a command, completely separate from her prior polite and candid requests. Trembling in fear and confused, with a strong sensation telling me something was horribly wrong, I said, Well, I'm sorry, but I can't let you into my house. You'll have to just stay here while I grab a phone and call for you. I couldn't leave these two kids just stranded out here, but I knew. Something in the pit of my stomach just told me I couldn't let them in. I was scared shitless. The two just looked straight forward, not responding. And suddenly,
You left your door open?
Or say anything, changes her expression completely. She squeezes her fists as they shake at her sides as if in great pain, and
She's
while
about to
moving her
beat
face
you.
or pale neck, makes a smile, showing all of her teeth at once. They were sharp, inhuman, like an animal's. At this, I make an obvious, loud scream of terror. The younger one notices my fear and looks up at me. In her pale face, her eyes. Blackness. Pure black. No clear iris or retina, like two black marbles. Then I noticed her silent, smiling on her sister's black eyes as well. A grotesque nausea fills my stomach, closing in on me, choking me.
That's what happens when you don't close the door.
I can't manage a scream. I just can't. I'm lost in fear. My entire body speeds up, tingling, numbing, and I lose myself. Finally, after what feels like several minutes, I let out a noise of horror that I don't think I've ever made as I close the door in front of me and retreat to the safety of my house. My body is shaking. I stand, crying, trembling in front of my door. I need to reach my cell phone, which is in the family room, and I can hear that 70s show in the background, which brings me some relief, but it sounds off now. Foreign. Almost like another language in my fearful state. I need to call the cops. I know that I can't let them in. Get the fuck out of here! I yell while banging on the door in an attempt to scare them off. Undiscernible sounds come from the other side, like animal cries or barks. It doesn't sound like the younger girl. I know it isn't. I know it's the older girl, the silent, mentally off one. But I just can't fathom this. No. Fuck no.
Look at her
I need to reach
gums.
my cell phone, but I can't move. I can't lose track of them. I can see the slippers in the side window, and I know that she's still there. More animal
Them
noises from
damn
outside.
toes.
I scream, yell, bang my lacrosse stick against the door. Anything I can get out of my tired lungs and muscles. It felt like I was being attacked by a grizzly bear. I was in full-on survival mode, doing all I could to scare them away. But any noise I made was matched by the older girl with her disturbing barks and screams that to this day haunt my dreams. Then from the other side of the door, I hear a muffled,
We just want to call our mother.
from the young girl.
Please, we are scared and alone. Let us in. Let us in.
That last part, let us in, is the same cadence twice over, like a recording. Please let us in, like a chant.
Let us in. Let us in. Let us in.
The younger girl continues, each demand louder and
No.
more assertive than the one before, as the older girl's noises match her demands. I wait for any sign of safety, of this horrible nightmare coming to an end. I continue
pretty
screaming
scared,
at them
buddy.
until finally it stops. The noises, the chanting, gone. The slippers are gone. I look out my window, sprinting legs. The other girl running the speed of a male track star, but with her legs twisting over each other like a circus freak.
Ugh.
This is so fucked up, I think to myself. I see her trail off, catching up with her younger sister, who must have given the orders to leave while she stayed for a minute or two, barking, screeching, and yelping like a Neanderthal. I watch as the older sister finds her younger sister, waiting on the other side of the road. They stand there, not looking back at my house, just staring straight ahead, the other way, like they were waiting for something. Someone. And suddenly, a large figure walks towards them. Long legs and arms, and lanky, inhuman features.
Let's
The
stay
shape
with
of a
dear
man,
mama.
But far too small and awkward in form. Like one of those scarecrow animation figures from a Tim Burton film. This creature, this monster leads them away into the night. I didn't leave my front door the entire night. I couldn't sleep and barely have sense. Close family, my girlfriend, and friends want to believe me. They say they don't think I'm crazy, but I feel they don't actually believe me. This is so fucked up, whatever this is. Wherever they are, it's real. Like they're subhumans trying to take over us. I don't know what this is, but they create the
Not us. They were trying to take over you.
terror like
Don't
nothing
put that
I've
on the
ever
rest of the world.
experienced. I lay awake at night, terrified when I open my eyes. That off older sister might be outside my window, hanging from a tree, smiling at me, waiting for me to walk outside and leave the house.
Okay. I'm gonna stop it at story 7. Take a break. Quickly. Get some food in me. And yeah, I'll be back. We can continue this. They're not that scary, in my opinion, but we'll not finish it because it's 16 hours, but we'll watch, maybe like another hour, possibly watch a movie or something today. We'll see what else we have in. Probably watch something, some Strange Addiction, something. We'll watch something.